After a one-year hiatus, the Louisiana Book Festival returned in 2011 to downtown Baton Rouge, celebrating the state's readers, writers, and their books. Join us for Louisiana Book Talks as we explore our rich literary culture with highlights from the 2011 Book Festival. In this edition, former Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards touches on his authorized biography written by television journalist and reporter Leo Honeycutt. We'll also hear from authors John and Katherine Paterson, husband and wife, as they explain their efforts to bring the century-old British fantasy for children, the Flint Heart, to an American audience.
Leo Honeycutt is an author, a reporter, a father, and a cook. He was an award-winning broadcast journalist for 28 years and obviously was selected in 2005 to be the official and authorized biographer of Governor Edwin W. Edwards. Leo is now writing When Camelot Began in Louisiana, the story and pictures of Jack and Jackie Kennedy's unofficial campaign start in the Bayou State. He's a well-recognized author and obviously is responsible for the biography of Governor Edwards that we are recognizing this morning. Governor Edwin Edwards is, of course, no stranger to this chamber. He was a city councilman in Crowley, served here in the Louisiana State Senate before he went to the United States Congress, and was elected governor of our state on 4 different occasions. He's the subject of this fascinating book that Leo has written, and we're really honored that Governor Edwards has agreed to be with us this morning. He has another engagement. The centennial celebration of Ville Platte, Louisiana, is taking place, and he's got to slip out and head to Ville Platte. And he told me as we were walking in that one of his ancestors on the Edwards side was actually one of the founders of that community. So it's very important that he be there as well. But we're really grateful that he's chosen to honor the book festival by being here with us this morning and giving you the opportunity to hear from him and to hear from Leo about the story that's told in the Edwin Edwards biography. So Leo, Governor Edwards, welcome and thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Let me first say that I've been in this chamber many times during my lifetime, and this is the best-looking crowd of senators I have ever seen. I wish you had been here many other times when I was up here. But it's good being here, and I want to congratulate the Lieutenant Governor for his leadership in this effort. I think those of you who are here ought to make a special note of the fact, now listen to me now, this is the first appearance that has been made by the past governor and the future governor. That's what you wanted me to say, Jay? Good fella. Thank you for inviting me. I apologize. A long time ago, as a matter of fact, while I was in prison, about 8 or 9 months ago, the people in Evangeline Parish were celebrating or planning to celebrate the centennial of the founding of the parish, and it happens one of my ancestors was one of the original founders, and they wanted me to be there. And so a long time before this event was scheduled, I agreed to be there, and I'm going to have to say what I can say here, then ask you to forgive me and let me go on about the rest of my schedule. Reading, of course, and knowing how to read and write is very important. Reminds me of these 2 fellows in Dallas who were counterfeiters. Got drunk one night. They were making $10 and $20 bills. They got drunk, and by error in that drunkenness, confused the 1 out of the $10 plate and the 2 out of the $20 plate, and they made some $12 bills. And they woke up the next morning and sobered up and looked at all those $12 bills, and one of them said, "What a terrible mistake. We used all that ink and all that paper making $12 bills. We can't do anything with them. We just wasted all that." And the other one said, "Oh, no. He said, we're going to go down to South Louisiana among them Cajuns. They're not too smart. That's the way them Cajuns talk sometimes. And he said, we're going to take those $12 bills and we'll go down in South Louisiana and we'll pass them because they don't know the difference." So they took the $12 bills and they drove down to Kaplan, and they stopped at Mr. Boudreau's store, got a pack of cigarettes and handed him a $12 bill. And one of these Texans said to Mr. Boudreau, "Can you change that?" And he looked at it and he said, "Yes, sir. How you want that? 3 4s, 4 3s, or 2 6s? Well, this is the festival season in Louisiana. All around the state, there are festivals celebrating the production of rice, sugarcane, sweet potatoes, pecans, all the foodstuffs that make us healthy and keep us alive. They contribute to the well-being of the citizens of the state and of the world, because we produce rice that feeds a tremendous amount of people around the world. Best rice in the world is grown in southwest Louisiana, where we have a rice experiment station. But today you're celebrating a different kind of festival. The foodstuffs grown in this state enrich our lives. The books that we produce and read enrich our minds. Now, at the end of our fingers, we can pick a book out of a shelf and know all there is to know about people in any foreign land. We can visit them mentally, know what foods they eat, what clothes they wear, what religions they are. We can know all about their cultures. The accumulated knowledge of the ages is contained in books that are available to the average citizen without any problem. Back in 1440, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, I'm sure he had no idea about how he would affect the world and the people that were to come after him. Within a matter of 3 years, 15 million books had been printed in Europe. It took a monk 20 years to write by hand and to transcribe a Bible. It could be printed in a matter of days. And thus he has opened to all of the world knowledge that heretofore was available only to the very select few. And this tradition has carried on through today, where books are so available that they're almost commonplace. And teachers throughout this country spend a great deal of time teaching people, young kids, how to read and write. I once told a class that it's good to know all the presidents of the United States and to repeat them by heart in order. But you know what's better? To know where to go to find a book to tell you how all the presidents rank. It's good to know much of the things that humans like to know, but it's also very important to be able to go to a book and find out what you need to know. But then we're seeing some change. Last night, as I thought about being here and thought about the printing press, which opened the doors to all the books that we enjoy now, I went to a computer and punched a few keys, and in a matter of seconds, I found out that it was in 1440 that Gutenberg invented the printing press. It would have been better, I guess, if I had known that, but it was also very good that I could go to a place and find out. And so it is with books, a permanent record of the accumulated knowledge of mankind throughout the ages. I came today in my short appearance to simply say thank you for what you're doing. Books, books, books open the minds of people and make us aware of what is happening throughout our world among other cultures and other people. And so I came to congratulate the Lieutenant Governor and his people working on making this festival a reality. I understand it wasn't conducted last year, but I join with him in saying that this is an important function of government and of citizens who are concerned about the education and knowledge of the people of Louisiana, and it should occur at least one time every year. And you make that possible. I just want to add this one note. I'm the only person here who has a wife and an author with him. Leo, of course, is the person who wrote the book, which is now one of the best sellers in the state. He spent 6 years doing research, and it's a wonderful book, not so much about me, but about our state during the past 4 decades. And while it is important that you have the book now, and I hope you will take it and enjoy it, and if you don't want to buy one, I'll give you Leo's phone number and address and call him up and he'll send you one. And if that happens, I want you to call me up and I'll send you the money for it, because you're not going to get it free from Leo. But it's a wonderful book, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud of the work that he did, and hope that in this festival you will have an opportunity to at least glance through it. And I like to think that 100 years from now, when people then concerned about what was happening in Louisiana in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and through the 2000s, will have this as one of the reference books that they can go through to find out what was happening. The book is a well-documented and well-researched story of my life of the time I was born on the banks of the Red River back in 1927. It tells about how when I was 9 years old, I got my first federal job. We were living southwest of Alexandria in a little town called Montclair, not far from Marksville. There was a flood coming up, and so the government had enlisted the aid of all the farmers in the area and laborers to work on the levee. About 200 of them were doing that. I was 9 years old and hired as a water boy. I took an open tin bucket with water that I filled from a barrel, took a dipper with a long handle and walked down the line, and these guys all drank from the dipper one by one out of an open bucket. Of course, you'd go to prison if you tried to do that. Well, I did go to prison. You'd go to prison if you tried to do that now because of new health and safety regulations. It so happened that I was getting 9 cents an hour, 15 cents an hour to work as a water boy. As fate would have it, 66 years later, I got another federal job not far from Alexandria. I was the chief librarian at the prison, but I was paid 20 cents an hour, so you see I was doing better, except I wasn't a volunteer at that time. But that's over with for me. Whatever happened, for good or bad, I held my head up. I walked in. I was 75 years old, facing a 10-year sentence, but I vowed to stay alive and to walk out. And I did. And while I was there, I helped a lot of inmates who did not know how to read. I helped 5 of them get a GED. I helped others with letters from home, and I wrote letters for them. I spent my time doing things for other people who could use my talents, because I had a good education, which I'm very proud of. In closing, I'll simply tell you this. You know how I feel about it? They sent me to prison for life, but I came back with a good-looking wife. Thank you.
The Flint Heart was initially written by Eden Phillpott in England, initially published in 1910. I read it with great enjoyment, many laughs, and after reading it, I turned it over to Katherine and wanted her to say what she thought of it. She also was delighted with the humor and the use of Eden Phillpott's use of English, his love of the language, and so then I began asking around in America what book companies would be willing to take it on to print it in America. We made 5 or 6 serious attempts to get it republished in America with 0 success. They all, those 6 all turned it down and said no, they couldn't deal with it. Finally, we happened to be in touch with Karen Lotz, who is the publisher at Candlewick Press, and she read it also, and she said, "This is delightful. This is a great book." And she asked Katherine and me if we would take a look at it and see how we could bring that about. So at that point, Katherine and I undertook that task, and there were some pages of Phillpott's book that had to be excised because, for instance, there were like 20 or 30 pages just of lists of the orders of fairies in this one part of England. Another section of jokes of English politics in the mid of that century, which again would have no meaning for American readers today. So Katherine and I worked on it over a number of months. I went through it first and picked out those sections that were extraneous, and then Katherine took the rest and found it happily possible to connect them together to bring about the book that you're going to be able to have in your hands and share with many others now and later on.
The Flint Heart is a dreaded talisman that was made in the Stone Age, buried for 5,000 years with the hope that it would never cause mischief again. But then it's unearthed by a kindly farmer. And because the Flint Heart gives the bearer of the Flint Heart great power, but with great power he loses compassion and generosity and all those qualities which make us truly human. So the children of Billy Jago cannot understand why their wonderful, loving father has suddenly turned into this beastly, greedy, unhappy, cruel man. And so they decided they have to go to see the fairies and see if they can find a solution to the problem. So Charles, who is 12, is delegated to go visit the fairies. Charles sees, he sits outside the fairy hole, and at last sees a tiny little creature that he realizes is a fairy. The fairy is wearing glasses and reading a book. At length, they begin a conversation, and the fairy reduces him magically to fairy size so that the fairy is not peering up at him with a telescope, which he is initially. The conversation has been going on for a while, and I'm interrupting their conversation to read it to you. "How lucky I am," said Charles, "to have met such a wonderful, clever pixie. For if most of them are thick-headed, they couldn't have helped me. Now I'll tell you why I've come." Then he told De Quincey about his father and how he had changed and how all the children, except John and including Ship, had held the meeting to decide what to do. After we decided on a present, the question was, what should it be? Unity, our little sister, who is 5, suggested I should come and ask the pixies. And here I am. De Quincey thought for a few moments. He didn't have the slightest idea what kind of present the Jago children should get for Billy Jago, but he pretended that he knew all about it. "The problem is not difficult of solution," he said. "Many far more profound cases than this have come under my notice, and I've never had anybody find fault with my decisions. But it happens that next Tuesday evening, the Zagabog, a Z, by the way, visits us. It will be a brilliant evening with music, recitations, dancing, and a dinner of 38 courses, dessert ices, and the best of wines." "That's all very interesting," said Charles, "but I'm afraid it won't help us." "It may or may not," said De Quincey. "That rests with you. The Zagabog, of course, knows everything. I suppose you are aware of that." "I've never heard of him." "And never heard of his agent in advance, the Snick?" "Never." Then I withdraw what I said about your being a clever person, said the fairy. I'm very sorry, said Charles, but it's no good pretending. If I didn't. Not a bit, De Quincey agreed. The Zagabog is easily the best, most brilliant, and wisest creature in the universe. What he doesn't know doesn't matter. Now, I will tell you what I can do. Our leading statesmen, philosophers, and men of letters have each received permission to bring one guest to the banquet. You may come as my guest, and I have little or no doubt that the Zagabog, if I make a favor of it with the snick, will answer your question. That is very kind, I'm sure. I don't know how to thank you, dear Mr. De Quincey, said Charles. You may have it in your power to do me a service on some future occasion, said the fairy. It is not probable, because we move in very different circles, walks of life. But the world is full of possibilities, so who knows? We shall expect you then at 8:15, because the king will arrive at 8:30. Be punctual, for the king is the soul of punctuality. It is his only strong point between ourselves. I'll be there, but it seems almost too much to have dinner with the king and the Zagabog and the snick. And you. It is dazzling, no doubt, and a great experience for a human boy, agreed De Quincey. You must not, of course, expect to be the guest of the evening. The Zagabog is the lion of the occasion. You will come merely as my friend. But I may tell you that any friend of mine will have a certain amount of attention paid to him. I hope not, said the boy. I only want to sit in a corner and see it all, or I might help with the dishes. De Quincey was much annoyed by this. You must come in the spirit of a guest, not in the spirit of a footman, he said. You must be as grand and haughty as you know how, out of compliment to me. I need hardly say that we dress for dinner. Of course, said Charles, so do I. Indeed? Forgive me, but I should hardly have expected you did. Always, said Charles, and also for breakfast and supper. De Quincey was quite impressed. He'd always felt that dressing for dinner was a matter of pure convention. Why dress for dinner if you don't dress for breakfast? Why, indeed, said Charles. There is no explanation. I hope, said the fairy, during the course of the banquet that you will take occasion to mention pretty loudly how you always dress for breakfast. Certainly, if you wish it, said Charles. It will show you possess the priceless gift of originality and may add to your importance. Now, remember, when you arrive next Tuesday, my secretary will meet you here. I shall be too busy putting the finishing touches to the ode, but the secretary will be ready to reduce you to a reasonable size and conduct you into the entrance hall. Good day to you now. And good afternoon to you, sir, said Charles. So it turns out that Charles does come to the fairy banquet, but his little sister Unity and the dog Ship decide to come along, even though they have no invitations. But it turns out to be a glorious affair, and Unity is quite admired and Ship is tolerated. But it's almost time to go home. After the ices, Ship, who was not interested in them, came and pulled on Unity's flower petal dress, and sorry to say, tore it rather badly. But it was very late, and he was remembering the time better than the children. So Charles inquired of De Quincey whether he might be permitted to ask the Zagabog his question now. De Quincey asked the snick, and the snick asked the Zagabog, and the Zagabog said, delighted, He was always ready to oblige a human boy. So Charles walked up to the head table, bowed politely to the king and queen and the Zagabog, and then told the story of how his father had changed. He explained about the meeting and about the gift, and asked if the Zagabog would be so kind as to decide what the gift should be. "What is your father's name?" the Zagabog asked. "Billy Jago, please, sir." "Look up William Jago," the Zagabog said to the Snick. The Snick bowed, rose, and hurried to a large pile of bright red books in the corner of the hall. "The Snick is consulting my volumes of Who's Who," explained the Zagabog. "I'm told that an earthly volume that goes by the same name is woefully incomplete. The excuse is that they never put in anybody who is not somebody. But that is no excuse at all. Everybody is somebody, and I challenge anybody to deny it." The Snick turned to the J's and found William Jago. Then he brought the volume containing Billy's doings to the Zagabog, who read it and shook his head sadly. "That rascally friend of mine, the Thunder Spirit, what a hot-headed boy he is. To think that Phut and Foom—" Here he broke off. Everyone waited in silence, for they did not know what the Zagabog was talking about. At last he shut the book and gave it back to the Snick. "It is not the cause for a gift," he said to Charles. "On the contrary, you mustn't give your father anything. You must take something away from him." "Oh dear," said Charles, "he won't like that. He never parts with anything now." "You need know nothing about it," said the Zagabog. "In an old waistcoat of your father's that hangs on a nail in an outpost at Marypit Farm, there is a Flint Heart. Get rid of that, and all will be well." "Thank you very much, sir," said Charles. "And I should like to say how much my sister and I are terrible obliged to you and everybody. We bid you all good night. And if ever it is in our power to do anything for the Pixies, I hope they'll tell us what it is." "Capital," said the king. "Nicely spoken," said the queen. You can see that I was reading sort of in the middle of the book, so that Flint Heart has plenty more time to cause all kinds of mischief before the book is over, which Charles and Unity and Ship and a friend, a mysterious hot water bottle manufactured in Germany by the name of Bismarck, will have to help them. Thank you.
Louisiana Book Talk is produced in cooperation with the Center for the Book in the State Library and made possible in part by a grant from the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. This program is a production of Louisiana Public Broadcasting.